everybody, and welcome to another episode of Open Mic Responder Roundtable. I am Mike McCabe, your host. I'm happy to be here with you again today. Today, a special episode. So we are so used to doing interviews with our first responder community. Today, we're going to kind of flip the script a little bit. We are going to speak to somebody who is very special to me. I met this individual back on January 15th, 2009. Which I will put down as probably one of the highlights of my career. Obviously, the area where I am, we have responded to many major incidents, and this certainly is one as well. But this one was a very happy ending, and that was the miracle on the Hudson. And the individual that we're going to speak with today, Dave Sanderson. There he is. Dave, welcome. How are you, pal?
Mike.
So listen, Dave, last year was our 10-year anniversary. January 15, 2009 was a special day for many, a harrowing day. And as I was saying, it was probably one of the highlights of my career because to be involved, number one, with the Miracle on the Hudson, but then to meet individuals like yourself, but also have a positive outcome, which in these major incidents, unfortunately, we don't always have that. So it was, although it was crazy, chaotic, and surreal, it was such an incredible outcome at the end that I thought it was really important that we get you on to tell the story, because I know that so many people are obviously interested in something like this, but to hear the story from inside the plane itself is, I'm sure, something that many haven't had the experience of hearing. So, Dave, welcome. Thank you for being on. And so let's talk about it. January 15th, 2009. Let's hear about how that went down. Right from the start, where you got to the airport, got on the plane, and you took off.
Yeah, and so the backstory is I wasn't supposed to be on that plane. I was scheduled on the 5 o'clock flight. So we got done early in Brooklyn, made the phone call to the travel agent, changed flights, and she 15:49. So candidly, I think I was supposed to be on that plane for a reason, because I wasn't supposed to be on. But as you know, there's nothing extraordinary. It was cold that day. It was 11 degrees. It snowed that morning. Yep. So, it was just a typical day in New Jersey, New York. So that's no big deal. So the planes were delayed that day.
Right.
That's nothing unusual about New York. So for the folks who are not listening in New York in that area, they may not understand that, but that's not unusual. But, I was one of the first passengers to board because of my status with U.S. Airways. So, I went back and I didn't pay attention, but, it was about, we were delayed taking off. So after we took off, and I'm sure that your audience understands that they fly out over the bay and then head north before they do their circling. As we headed out, as we got about 60 seconds out, when I heard and I had never heard anything. So, that really caught my attention. I was in seat 15A, so I could look out the window and see what was going on, and all I could see was flames coming out from underneath the left wing. So I knew something had happened, but I flew so often, Mike, it's like no big deal.
Right.
Planes have multiple engines, no big deal. I tell people now, I think that's one of the biggest pieces of this that don't get talked about a lot, but it's one of the saving graces because everybody on the plane heard one explosion. And I truly believe they would have heard multiple explosions. They probably would have thought something different was happening. But since they heard one explosion, I think everybody thought, okay, we're just going back to the airport.
Right.
And that's why it's a 1 in a billion shot, right? I mean, you have bird hit simultaneously on both sides of the plane.
Yeah.
It's a 1 in a billion shot.
Unbelievable.
But as that's one of the things that, as I thought about it over the last several years, is that's amazing. I mean, because as you know, being in that area, and I travel there like frequently, if you would have heard bang bang, you probably thought of maybe a terrorist attack,
absolutely,
something like that.
Yep.
So nobody's losing their minds. Everybody's controlled at that point. We were banking. I looked out the window and I saw something I hadn't seen before because I've flown out there so often. I thought I knew the route. But when we were banking, we banked left instead of banking right, going down I saw the skyline of Manhattan. And that's what really got me. I said, well, I've never seen this before. I mean, we're pretty close to the skyline of Manhattan.
Right.
And as we started approaching the George Washington Bridge, I'm like, I've never seen a bridge that close before.
Right.
From the flight. So I thought, okay, something's – it was right before or as we were crossing the bridge when you heard the captain's famous words, "This is your captain, brace for impact."
Right.
And I think that was the moment that I know many of the passengers I've spoken to realized, okay, something's going on is not good, because logistically, and that area, the George Washington Bridge is roughly about 600 feet up.
Yep.
And the plane was roughly 1,000 feet in descending at that point. So we cleared the bridge by approximately 400 feet or so.
Yep.
And that's not a lot of room.
Nope.
Because as we were crossing over the bridge, I looked out the window on the left. I looked down. You could see people's faces looking up. So you knew that you're pretty close to the bridge. Like, okay, something's not good.
Yep.
And, the skill of the captain and the first officer were amazing, because they had to lift the nose up to get it over the bridge. Then they had to put it back down and get the speed back up to over 100 miles an hour to maintain flight. I'm not a pilot. I'm understanding from other pilots and captains, that was one of the critical moments at that point, because he got it over, but now we're heading straight towards the river. And all you could see out the window was a river. And I was on the left side, so I had basically the bird's eye view of what was going on, and I could see the buildings were getting bigger and bigger and bigger as we were going down, down, down. And as we started approaching and we hit, it was a hard hit. And when we hit, I went back in my seat and forward in my seat, and that's sort of whiplash. Mm-hmm. And I came back and I looked up, and all of a sudden I looked out the window and I saw a light, but the water was already halfway up the window.
Oh, wow.
So I was towards the back of the plane, and the angle that everybody saw, the plane sitting in the water from, I think it was from the New York side.
Yep.
As the plane was floating, it looks like it was level, but It wasn't. Because if you look from the side, as you probably did, it was at an angle.
Yep.
So the backside of the plane was having water rush in because of the impact, and there was a hole came in the bottom of the plane because of the impact. And then you had, all of a sudden, someone tried to open up the back door, so you had water coming in the back door.
Oh, my word.
So the back of the plane was roughly anywhere from waist to chest level deep. The front of the plane was about waist level to ankle deep.
Okay.
So it really depended what part of the plane you were in and what kind of experience you were having, because the back of the plane people had a lot. This is my personal opinion, tougher experience, water experience.
Sure.
Because also, as you saw how he hit it perfectly, the back of the plane hit first. Right. So the majority of the impact came in the back of the plane.
I don't think that many people realize that the true potential for catastrophe with that plane potentially hitting the GWB, the George Washington Bridge. Yep. I mean, it literally, after the fact, when we did the after actions and everything else, it came out how close you were to that bridge, and it's astounding. That was scary in itself, but we didn't even know that was a possibility then. All we saw was the actual commercial airliner in the Hudson. Now, to me, it sounds like when you were on the plane, you didn't have a lot of time. Now, this was only 5 miles away from LaGuardia, so you didn't have a lot of time to react, and there wasn't a lot of communication. It seems like, obviously, Sully was doing what he had to do to negotiate that bridge and to figure out where he was going to ditch the plane. I know that he had spoken about going back to Teterboro, and there was no possibility for that, and that's where his skills came into play because, like you said, I don't know that people obviously now know the heroism of the captain and the first officer, but that day they had no time to make decisions, and they made the most perfect decisions that you possibly could have made.
And that's what I tell people. I mean, if you look at this from a business perspective, instead of just what we're talking about, the decision making that had to happen in such a compressed amount of time, is astounding. And that's where all situational awareness kicks in. That's where all the training, and I call my book Moments There, because all these moments kick in at that one moment. Yep. To make those kind of skilled, educated decisions that you had to make, because it's life and death at this point. Because, Mike, you know better than I do, and I'll leave this to you, because I've heard there's any time during rush hour on the George Washington Bridge, there are roughly anywhere between 500 and 800 cars at any one time. That's right. I've heard that from a couple of first responders in that area. Sure. So if you can imagine that plane hitting the George Washington Bridge, or just clipping it doesn't matter, just having an interaction with the bridge, not only you're impacting 155 people, now you're impacting 500 to 800 cars with multiple people. Yep. Now you're looking at something pretty major.
Incredibly major. And, at the point of dispatch for this job, I remember exactly where I was. I was in Bayonne. I was the city commander that day, and we got and again, as my role as county coordinator, I'm responsible for mobilization of any major incident. The job came in, and it was about an airplane in the Hudson. I'll be honest with you, being in the game for a long time, you say, well, listen, we have tour helicopters go down all the time. Maybe this was a Cessna, a Piper, something that went down. So I said, I'll start taking a ride up there. As I started responding up there, it came in as a commercial airliner. That's where things changed. You start to think now through things. All right, now in your head, you're starting to put in play, what are we going to need for this? How bad can this be? And then you start to think, and you can't not, you start to harken back to 9/11. Is this another terror event? Because if you have a commercial airliner in the Hudson, what's going to happen next? That may just be the first part. I remember pulling up in Weehawken and pulling up to the ferry terminal. And like you said, it was freezing. It was 11 degrees that day. It was probably the coldest day that year. I remember getting out of the vehicle, looking out into the Hudson, and seeing people stand on the wings of a commercial airliner. It was probably one of the more surreal visions that I've had in my career. At that point, we still didn't know the significance of it, but we knew that by the grace of God, the airplane was still visible. We thought that this was going to be completely submerged. Take me to what it was like when you had the initial impact. What was it like inside the plane itself?
So once we hit, and I came back up and I looked out the window and I knew that I was alive. The term that I used that night on all the media is control chaos, because one of the things that really amazed me is people didn't lose their heads, but it was chaotic in the plane. People were moving very fast. You had to move because you just kept hearing people say, go, 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 go.
Right.
So people started going, and and I talk about in one of my talks is they go to their primary instinct, right? At that point, survival.
Sure.
And excuse me, they're going to do whatever they have to survive. But each person, of course, you break it down. Each person has a different survival mentality. Some people are, go into that, I just got to get out. Some people go into, how can I help?
Yep.
Some people are like, I don't know what to do. So I think that was part of inside the plane, because when I got up, like I said, it was a 15A. I got to the aisle. My initial game plan, because I'm a business guy, I make plans. Like, okay, my game plan, aisle up, out. I'm just gonna get out of here. But then that's when I heard something in my head. It said, my mother said, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And which kicked me into a different modality, which is like, now let's go help somebody, because I knew I was alive. Because now you're looking inside the plane, and I'm going back over the seats to the back of the plane. Man, now you have a different game plan.
Yeah.
Because water is about chest level deep in the back. And if now we know the story. Doreen, the flight attendant, got injured on impact because she sliced her leg, because of a piece of metal. So she's incapacitated.
Right.
So she's got to get out. She's injured and incapacitated. So people had to start getting her out. So now you have people with no professional or trained leadership. But then leadership kicks into people, right? Sure. And that's people who start giving direction. So when I got to the back of the plane, people were still moving, and we had a lady back there who didn't want to move.
Right.
And fortunately, there were a couple of ladies back there that enticed her to start moving.
Right.
And that happened pretty quick, and I got behind them. So I was making my way out behind everybody outside, going up the aisle. And part of the plane was on the impact. Some of the bins had broken open because of the impact. So now you've got luggage floating in the water. And you saw it up close. The back of the plane was submerged.
Correct.
So, it was already almost underwater.
Yep.
So now it's dark in the back of the plane. So now they tell you, and one of the things that they'll tell you in an incident on a plane is you got to know where your exits are and start feeling.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I make a little joke, but it's true. They tell you when you get on the plane, look for those lights to lead you out.
Yep.
Well, there's no lights underwater.
No, there's not.
So it's like,
you were on your own.
You got a different game plan, right? It's all right. Well, there's no lights. It's dark, and we're moving. I'm going to feel the seats and just make my way up. So you can see, it wasn't pitch black, but it was dark. So the first light you see is on the left and right side of the exit doors, and that's where everything started happening.
After you made your way to the rear of the plane, was the captain able to make any contact at that point with the passengers, or was it just silence?
He was. I don't remember him in the plane. He was going back and forth because we know that from the different accounts, and he was doing a heck of a job making sure. But when I was going out, I didn't see anybody in uniform.
Okay.
Because if you know the positioning, right, you got the captain and the first officer. First officer's got the front right door,
right,
as you're looking at the plane, front right door.
Yep.
The lead flight attendant's got the left door.
Okay.
And the other flight attendant was supposed to have each of the other doors. But as we know, Doreen got injured, so there's no one on the right door. So, yeah, I'm sure he was going back and forth. He did an amazing job. I'll be full. My perspective focused on anything but just trying to find the light and get to that door.
Absolutely. So now you are basically shepherding people off of this plane, assisting those that are having like this, psychogenic type of traumatic, obviously this is intense. This is crazy. So now people are making their way out onto the wings of the plane. And again, that probably is a vision that'll stick with me forever. But I viewed it from land. So it's a totally different perspective as to those that were standing basically mid-shin at that point in the Hudson River in 11 degrees. What was that like? What were people saying at that point?
Well, when I got to the first light I saw was on the right side at 10F.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm out of here. But then I looked out, there was no room on the wing because it was already filled up.
Okay.
There was no room on the lifeboat because it was already filled up.
Right.
So I was still in the plane. One of the first pictures on Good Morning America was me hanging out of the plane, holding onto the lifeboat.
Okay.
But no one was really talking a lot. People were going move, 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 and but I think everybody at that point says, "What are we going to do?" Because the ferries just started arriving at that point.
Right.
So you see people standing on the wing. You're exactly right. It's amazing. This wing holds this many people.
Insane.
But the water's 36 degrees likewise, right? So the air's 11, water's 36.
Yep.
And as you know, being in that area, and I've learned a lot because I'm in that area now a lot, when speaking and doing other things, is that current is fast.
Yep.
So the plane was sort of floating down the river, and that lifeboat was floating out into the river.
Sure. Absolutely.
And no one... And I go to this day. No one listens to the flight attendants. One of my missions is people listen to the flight attendants. Is those little lifeboats are tethered to the plane,
right?
As we saw in the movie, captain and first officer had to cut the cord for the lifeboat to get a front left.
Yep.
But no one knew that it was tethered, so that's why they were screaming. You get people screaming, "Hold on, hold on, hold on!" And that's why this picture of me holding on to the lifeboat as close as I could to the wing, waist deep in 36-degree water, was like the one I look at that every time I get shivers. It's like, I can't believe this was going on, that I was involved with this.
Sure. So, you folks were going through that whole survivalist mentality on the inside and then, subsequently on the outside. And from a responder perspective, we were going about it as, holy moly. I mean, we literally have a commercial airliner down, but we have what appeared to be multiple survivors, not knowing if there were people missing. But the greatest challenge for us, Dave, and I've said it many times in lecturing, was that this was a multi-state operation because it actually ditched in the center of the Hudson. So we had a response on the New York side and we had a response on the New Jersey side. And the problem with that is we have to now account for all of the passengers who are going to two different states. And we don't know where each one went. So we had detectives from New York on our side, and we had New Jersey reps on the New York side, and we were diligently going over the manifest to make sure that we had every soul identified. Otherwise, the divers were going in to look. And that was a challenge. It was a big challenge because, with these types of situations, accountability is everything. And I know that you ended up on the Jersey side, correct?
I did. Yep.
And that's where we met. And you came through the terminal where we treated many patients who literally, the whole sentiment with the patients was incredible because they were just grateful. They were just grateful. Yep. They were happy, smiling. They couldn't believe what they just had experienced. And obviously, a lot of them were in shock. not medically shocked, right, but traumatically induced shock. And they were just grateful to have survived. And I think that, with you specifically, as I said, we met on that day. And we obviously met quite a bit afterwards. There was a feeling of hope. There was a feeling of inspiration. There was a feeling of empowerment. And I think that you started to get a true appreciation for the first responder community when you experienced what you did, not only for the medics, the EMTs, the fire personnel, the law enforcement personnel, but the hospital personnel. Everybody that came together on that day, from within the plane to the ferries that, the New York waterways that made the initial rescues, coming through the terminal to the first responders, getting into the hospital, all of these people did something. And I think that at that point, and you have told me, reshaped your life and your purpose. So tell me about that.
Most definitely, because one of the things, as I look back and amazed me is, and you may have a different opinion, but the coordination, and people were coordinated, because you're right. I think one of the things you just mentioned, I talk about, is in the hospital that night, I had people, New York State Police come talk to me, right? I had FBI come talk to me. I had people from the other side of the river come talk to me, because I think what you said is exactly right. Some people they couldn't find initially, because some people may have just gone home, may have gone to New York side or New Jersey side. One of the most interesting parts of this, but the appreciation I started getting about first responders really started from the shore there in Weehawken all the way through the hospital, because I started realizing that these people are not only highly competent and skilled, but they care.
Absolutely.
And I'll give you one specific instance on this, how this clicked for me. And once again, I didn't realize it that night, because things were just blurry that night.
Right.
When I was in the hospital, and after my EMTs and the fire and all the medics start to take me, I'm now in the hospital, and I'm laying there and they're going after me, right? The EMT Heather came back in to check in on me. And I heard something, and maybe Mike, you can validate this, that doesn't happen a lot. Because they have to go back and do their own gig, right? And it's something else, right?
Absolutely.
And she came in and checked on me and told me that she cared about what happened that day to me. And I think a lot of us had that experience. That's why I speak so often for fire, medic, police, sheriffs, government, military, because I now have a greater appreciation for not only the risks they have, but they can see and the skill levels. Because one of the things I got to do, Mike, recently is last year, 2 years ago, I got to go to fire school in Illinois with the Illinois Fire. And I got to go through the paces like you guys got to go through.
That's awesome.
And it was an eye-opening experience for me.
That's really cool, Dave. And I think that's why we've connected so much. We've celebrated throughout the years, because, again, it was an uplifting story. We celebrated last year the 10-year anniversary. I think I actually think we have a picture of that. There it is right there. That
Amazing picture.
Yeah, that's Gio Ahmad from Weehawken and Henry Corticans from the State EMS Task Force, myself and you. That was another cold day we got together last year. But that was that was literally at the site. Where we were taking patients off. Well, we were receiving patients off the ferries, and just another great day. A great day to celebrate such an amazing story. And I know you're doing so many different things now. As far as inspirational, you have your own company now, Dave Sanderson Speaks, and you speak publicly all the time. About the inspirational component and, all of the great things that came out of this, as far as emotionally and physically and the challenges. But you speak to it, and you speak about how to empower and so many awesome things. You've raised over $14 million for the American Red Cross. Dave, just tell me a little bit about, how this basically took your life and the purpose that you had and reshaped it.
Well, thank you, because I think what happened afterwards and after I started thinking through this is I had a new mission, and I really, I learned so many things from this. One of the things I learned that changed my life dramatically was to be less judgmental, because I think as you're going through something like this, you could judge people on how they reacted. And I started thinking I can't judge people because I don't know what their backstory and their mindset is. And I started realizing if I can become less judgmental, how I can hopefully impact people. So that really changed from this experience for me, because candidly, I was probably pretty judgmental, before, and I would
Right.
probably make snap judgments on people, but
Mm-hmm.
it allowed me the opportunity not only to meet several tremendous people, but also be able to become less judgmental. And that's why I did my TED Talk, because one of the things I found in the first responding units and fire, and especially military,
Mm-hmm.
is many people who go through this or have to respond to something like this go through a depression period, or even worse, PTSD.
Yep.
And I know personally in Toronto, who is an EMT, or called a paramedic in Toronto, who's had this experience, and I had the chance to talk to him. So that's why I did my TED Talk about how you can grow from experiences like this instead of going into a depressed state. And I'm so passionate about being around first responding units and be able to help them and be able to share the inspiration, because this is a positive story. But like you said, and I think your folks and first responding folks don't get to hear the other side as often as they really need to hear it. And because they make an impact on people's lives, not only physical, but emotional and mentally, which is huge.
Absolutely. And we certainly appreciate that. And ironically, like I said, this is probably one of the highlights of my career because of the positive, the positive outcome. We're so used to dealing with, negative outcomes, not from lack of effort and lack of skill, but just because of the industry we're in, that this was such a traumatic experience, but in the same breath brought out so many incredible things, so many stories of hope, and so many great plans that just took hold and actually worked out. That I always look back on this as a positive. I always, keep that in the back of my mind, that not every major incident is going to be catastrophic. Some things, you can take positives out of and have that inspiration. And that's why I think you're such a special individual, and that this incident itself was so special that it was really important to get you on, because not only do you have, such insightful things to say, but you actually survived a plane crash, which is not anything, not many people can say they have. And you'll take that.
It's a small club.
Yeah, it's a very small club.
Yeah.
And I hope I never have to join.
That's right.
But, Dave, I really appreciate you coming on to tell your story. As I said, anybody that wants to learn more about Dave and his story and the things that he's doing these days can go to DaveSandersonSpeaks.com. His Twitter handle is on there. Again, I can tell you firsthand, the man will speak to you. He's always willing to share some hopeful views. And again, Dave, I can't thank you enough for coming on with us today and sharing your story, because it was a challenge for everyone, but it was just hopeful. It was hopeful. It was inspirational. And I thank you for everything that you have done over the years. Of course, I will see you again next January. But thank you for coming on, pal. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'm honored. And if any of you would like to hear me speak, I'm going to be back in one of my favorite states of New Jersey coming in April. So please let Mike know, and we'll have a special invitation for you to be able to hear it up close and personal in New Jersey.
Sounds good, Dave. Thanks again, pal. We'll talk to you real soon, okay?
Thank you very much.